Welcome to the flight levels. You're likely already familiar with common IFR procedures such as an ILS approach, holding patterns, maybe even departure procedures. But have you ever been issued a through clearance? What about a block altitude? Today, we're going through some of the most obscure and least common IFR procedures in the United States National Airspace System. Let's get to it. If you're enjoying this content, please hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps me continue making great videos like this one, and it also ensures you don't miss any upcoming episodes. Now, don't count on ever receiving this first clearance. Controllers generally do not like giving up large blocks of airspace to a single aircraft, and that's exactly what happens with a through clearance. The idea is that with a through clearance, a pilot is cleared to descend and land at an intermediate airport, and then they are also cleared to depart and proceed en route to another airport. In theory, this can save both the pilot and the controller some time from having to cancel an IFR clearance and receive a brand new clearance off the ground. The reality is, the controller has to block the airspace from the pilot's present position all the way down to the first airport and then all the way through the departure as well. The real kicker is there's no clearance void time, so the pilot can lollygaggle all they want while the controller is blocking all of this airspace the whole time. Let's move on to block altitudes. These are actually very helpful. Let's say that you're cruising along IFR at a hard altitude of 8,000 feet, and you find yourself flying in and out of layers of clouds getting bumped around. Well, you could request a block altitude. If you were assigned, say, 7,000 blocked to 9,000, you could then climb and descend at your discretion within that range as much as you wanted. You don't even have to tell the controller every time you change your altitude because they're blocking that whole range of altitudes the whole time. With a block altitude, now you have a chance of staying out of the clouds and out of the bumps. Now, as you proceed en route, if you find a hard altitude that keeps you in a smooth ride, you can give back those unused altitudes back to the controller, and they will appreciate that. Now, let's explore cruise clearances. These are useful if landing IFR at an airport that may not have great radio reception with your radar controller along the remainder of your route. How does a cruise clearance help with this? Well, when issued a cruise clearance, the controller is blocking the entire remainder of your route from your present altitude all the way down to the surface. This means that you as the pilot are now responsible for staying at or above the minimum IFR altitude until either you can start a published instrument approach procedure or you can continue descending in VFR conditions using VFR rules. This begs an important question. So if I'm now responsible for flying at or above the minimum IFR altitude, how do I know what that altitude is? For that, we need to take a look at FAR 91.177. Essentially, if you're on a route with an MEA or a MOCA, then you need to follow that. For those of us in the 21st century using GPS Direct, then we look to paragraph 2, which says, in the case of operations over an area designated as mountainous area, in part 95 of this chapter, an altitude of 2,000 feet above the highest obstacle within a horizontal distance of 4 nautical miles from the course to be flown, or, in any other case, an altitude of 1,000 feet above the highest obstacle within a horizontal distance of 4 nautical miles from the course to be flown. How exactly do you sort that out? That's entirely up to you. All that said, when issued a cruise clearance by ATC, you have all the authorization you need to descend and land at your intended destination IFR. Next is a clearance I even got to issue once as a controller. A contact approach is similar to a visual approach, except that the pilot does not need to have the airport nor any other traffic to be issued it. The pilot is the only one that can initiate a contact approach. There also needs to be at least one published instrument approach procedure at the intended airport. There also needs to be at least one statute mile of visibility reported at the destination, and the pilot must also be able to maintain clear of clouds along the approach. When a pilot requests a contact approach, they're essentially saying, "Hey boss, I don't see the airport just yet, but I know my way around here and I've got it from here." From the controller's perspective, this is great. All they have to do is block the airspace just like any other instrument approach. The advantage for the pilot is on a contact approach, they don't have to fly the whole published instrument approach procedure because, as you know, sometimes those take a few minutes. The last clearance we'll cover today is one I've even used a few times as a pilot. It's called VFR climb on course. As you know, some published departure procedures can be very lengthy, and sometimes they force you to fly in the opposite direction of where you actually want to go. If you haven't seen it yet, be sure to check out my other video about terrain and obstruction clearance responsibility for IFR departures. I'll put a link in the description. In the video, I explain how radar controllers are unable to issue vectors to departing aircraft until they climb above their minimum IFR altitudes. Let's tie in how VFR climb on course relieves this problem. Years ago, I was instructing an IFR student on a flight from Casper, Wyoming to Laramie, Wyoming. Now, just south of Casper, there are some tall mountains. So upon our IFR departure, the controller issued us a vector essentially straight east when we wanted to go south. Now, since it was actually a VFR day, we just needed to stay IFR. I asked the controller, "Hey, can we get a VFR climb on course to the south?" And the controller, of course, replied with, "No problem, VFR climb on course approved." And then he said, once you reach the minimum IFR altitude, then proceed direct whatever the next fix in our clearance was. The important thing to remember is that when requesting a VFR climb on course, you as the pilot are now taking on responsibility for both terrain clearance and traffic. You're essentially in a hybrid of you're on an IFR clearance, but you're following VFR rules until you reach the altitude of the minimum IFR altitude for the controller. Thank you for watching. How many of these unusual clearances have you heard of before? Even better, have you ever been issued a block altitude? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any upcoming episodes about the inside world of air traffic control. Be sure to check out flight-levels.com and remember, don't just fly, climb to the flight levels. If you want to learn more about the inside world of air traffic control, click here to see my video about how air traffic controllers assign speeds. You're going to love it.